Most people think that the classic Dr. Seuss book, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, is just a heartwarming story that emphasizes the importance of compassion, community, and the true spirit of the holidays, which transcends material gifts and commercialization. It is that, and more, much more. When you're snuggled up with your very own Cindy Lou Who, reading the book or watching the 1966 movie, you should also use it as an opportunity to talk to your kids about privacy. Hi, my name is David Fraser. I'm an internet, technology, and privacy lawyer with the Canadian law firm McGinnis Cooper. I also teach internet and media law at the Schulich School of Law at Dalhousie University. I do not, and I emphasize not, teach English literature. In a nutshell, the Grinch hates Christmas, and he's determined to make sure that his neighbors in Whoville don't get to enjoy it at all. He wanted to stop Christmas from coming, so on Christmas Eve, he dresses up as Santa and steals everything Christmassy, from stockings to presents to trees to tinsel. He took the Who pudding and even the roast beast. The trees, the presents, the feast, all gone. The Grinch thought he'd won as the night turned to dawn. But what did he hear? A sound, oh so slight. It was singing, yes, singing, in the bright morning light. The Whos were still joyful, their spirits not marred. They sang without presents, their joy not barred. The Grinch was astonished, he hadn't foreseen that Christmas was more than the material scene. Among the first things we learn about the Grinch is that he hates Christmas, and there's loads of speculation as to why. We're told that it could be his head wasn't screwed on just right. It could be perhaps that his shoes were too tight. But I think the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. Now, if you spend any time on Twitter, you know that any mention of anything health-related is likely followed by replies screaming about protected health information, and that must be a violation of HIPAA. Now, these replies are almost always wrong. The term we use up here in Canada, which is where I assume Whoville is located, is personal health information, and that includes information about someone's physical and mental health. Now, having an abnormally small heart likely fits into that definition. But our health privacy laws simply don't apply when someone other than a healthcare provider is talking about someone's health. And it should be noted that our general privacy laws exclude personal information that is collected, used, or disclosed for journalistic, artistic, or literary purposes, and for no other purpose. So the Grinch has no claim against Dr. Seuss for talking about his cardiac and cranial attachment abnormalities. I would say this discussion of mine also fits into that exclusion, so the Grinch can complain about me all he wants. He has no recourse. The most outrageous thing that the Grinch does is home invasion. It's not violent, but whoa. The Grinch descends all the chimneys in Whoville and clears out all the Christmas gifts. Obviously, that's a criminal offense of breaking and entering, and the civil tort of trespass. But it's also an invasion of privacy. We're supposed to be secure in our homes and our possessions, free from intrusion by uninvited third parties. And we actually have a tort called intrusion upon seclusion, which may be applicable here. For the Grinch to be liable, the legal test is one who intentionally intrudes, physically or otherwise, upon the seclusion of another, or his private affairs or concerns, is subject to liability to the other for invasion of his privacy, if the invasion would be highly offensive to a reasonable person. We usually see it being used in the context of informational privacy, but you saw it also includes physical intrusions. And I can hardly think of anything more intrusive than some stranger entering my home. And certainly it would be offensive to a reasonable person, whether they're from Whoville or anywhere else. We also see the Grinch engaged in surveillance. The Grinch watches the Whos from his mountain home, observing their holiday preparations and celebrations. While in the story it's more about his disdain for their joy, he really is obsessively observing their comings and goings, and their joyful decorating. So is he breaking any laws here? Yeah, I don't think so. We have laws related to voyeurism, and those can be triggered in some instances, but here the Grinch is able to see the public spaces in Whoville, and he's not being particularly covert or sneaky about it. I'm not sure his lair is easily visible from the ground in Whoville, but he's not making any effort to hide his presence. Now, if he were to park his sled outside of a Who's house and just stare at the house for hours on end, it may be harassment if it makes the resident reasonably fear for their safety. But here the Grinch keeps a safe distance. It's likely lawful, but it still is super creepy and obsessive. The Grinch's master plan to steal Christmas from all the Who's down in Whoville starts with identity theft and impersonation. "I know just what to do," the Grinch laughed in his throat, and he made a quick Santa Claus hat and a coat, and he chuckled and clucked, "What a great Grinchy trick! With this coat and this hat, I look just like Saint Nick." What it really looks like is identity fraud to me. Here's what the Criminal Code of Canada has to say. Everyone commits an offense who fraudulently personates another person, living or dead, A, with intent to gain advantage for themselves or another person, B, with intent to obtain any property or any interest in any property, C, with intent to cause disadvantage to the person being personated or another person, or with intent to avoid arrest or prosecution or to obstruct, pervert, or defeat the course of justice. Now it says, quote, "personates another person living or dead," unquote. I guess the Grinch's guilt or innocence under this charge will turn on whether the judge believes in Santa, because I'm not sure this phrase would capture impersonating a fictional, mythical character. But assuming the prosecution gets over that hurdle, there's little doubt in my mind that the Grinch's Grinchy scheme is entirely intended to gain advantage for the Grinch, to gain all of the Who's Christmas gifts and to cause disadvantage to the Who's down in Whoville. If he also intended to use this costume to facilitate evading the Whoville police, well, then that paragraph D may also be triggered. He might say that he was just wearing a red coat and a hat and not really impersonating Santa. He did admit it in front of his dog Max, and he clearly pretended to be Santa when Cindy Lou Who asked why he was taking the Christmas tree. But unfortunately, a dog and Cindy Lou Who is no more than 2, are likely not competent witnesses. While the Grinch may redeem himself at the end of our story, offenses under Section 403 could be prosecuted as indictable or by summary conviction. If prosecuted by indictment, the maximum penalty is 10 years in jail. If prosecuted by summary conviction, the maximum penalty is 2 years less a day or a $5,000 fine, or both. Speaking of crimes, though this doesn't really have a privacy angle, if you treat a dog like the Grinch treats Max, then you're guilty of animal cruelty, and you would be looking at up to 5 years in jail. Just don't do that. So this holiday season, when you're cuddling up with your young ones with this great book or watching a movie, keep an eye out for the privacy themes and make sure to tell everyone at your family meals that the Grinch isn't just about anti-materialism and redemption, but it's also about privacy. Now, before I'll wrap up, I'll share a couple of privacy tips to be mindful of around the holidays. Now, online shopping is great, don't get me wrong, but you should be aware that information about what you're shopping for might be inadvertently disclosed to the recipient of the gift. For example, various members of our family use the same Amazon and other accounts. If I go browsing for particular items, and particularly if I buy them, someone else who logs into that account can see that activity. There can be notifications about purchases, and the purchase history is there for all to see. Just be mindful of that. And if you share devices, the other people who use that device may see ads that are relevant to what you have been looking for. So if you share a device, think about using an incognito tab for your online shopping. People tend to share information about happy occasions on social media. This can be opening presents at holiday parties and other events. Just be mindful of the privacy interests of anyone who you may capture in an image and post online. Particularly think about kids' privacy, and especially any kid who is not your kid. Check your privacy settings to make sure that the audience is appropriate for what it is that you're sharing. Also related to social media, people often post about their holidays, and this time of year has a lot of travel. Your social media postings can let people know when your house is empty, and at least the police say this information has been used by people planning burglaries. And finally, there are loads and loads of scams that fill our inboxes. But around this time of year, when a lot of things are shipped, you should be very cautious about this type of message. You might actually be expecting parcels, and some may be late. These are almost always a complete scam, hoping you'll click on the link and share your personal information. Always be vigilant. I hope this has been interesting and useful. I try to put out a new video every few weeks, so if you're interested in this sort of content, please click the like and subscribe buttons. Also, leave a comment if you have any questions or if you have any suggestions for other topics to cover. And of course, feel free to share this with anyone who you think may be interested in hearing about Canadian tech and privacy law. Thanks for tuning in, and all the best for restful holidays.